it's the 29th anniversary of the historic presidential election held on Saturday, June 12, 1993. It was not only the first time a Southerner will win a presidential election, but it was an election widely adjudged to be the freest and fairest in Nigeria's checkered political history. Its eventual annulment and the crisis it sired all contributed to make the event historic. We'll be looking at the June 12th, the legacy of June 12th in relation to Nigeria's democracy at this point in time and ahead of the 2023 general election. With us to look at this from this perspective is Baba Aye. It's a pleasure having you on Sahara TV again, Baba Aye.
Thank you very much, Gomez. It's a pleasure to be back.
In what has become a norm for the president, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, to address the nation on the occasion of Democracy Day every June 12th, this year's celebration was no different. The early hours of Sunday, the president addressed Nigerians on the trajectory of the country since independence, its ups and downs, and how democracy has fared. Now, given the state of the country at the moment, Babaye, the big issue is whether the claims that has been advanced by the president in that speech tally with the realities on ground. From your own perspective, has Nigeria's democracy progressed despite its litany of crisis?
Very good question. I will say yes and no. First and foremost, starting with the very idea of democracy itself. Because when we take democracy, there are two seemingly different elements in what we are thinking of, in what we are talking of. There's something that is democracy in general. I mean, what did Lincoln say? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. So the extent of which people are involved in running society and all that, it's part of democratization, and it goes beyond just ballots. It includes even, democracy in the workplace. To what extent are workers involved in, co-management? It involves them even in the universities and tertiary institutions generally. It might seem a diversion, but you understand what I'm saying now. I studied both in Germany and in Brazil. We can say Germany is Europe, but Brazil is a global South country, despite its leaps and bounds. But in each of these schools, as a student, I could vote towards determining the vice chancellor. Yes, you now had different weights of the votes for lecturers, for non-academic staff, for students, but everybody in that community could contribute to determining who would be the vice chancellor. You understand? So these are all elements of democracy. When you look at this, to a great extent, there hasn't been much of improvement in democracy. However, democracy is also about the power, because democracy also, you can talk of democracy for the bosses, democracy, because civil rule does not tell us everything. You could talk of workers' democracy, you could talk of liberal democracy. The fact that we have had 22 years now of civil rule with the pillars of parliament and executive, we can say that democracy as the rule of the civilian arm of the class of the 1% has grown, even despite all the tumult and all that. So it's a yes and no question, but when you put the pros and the cons together, I will say that the poor masses in Nigeria have not benefited from the political situation in the country, as well as they have not benefited from the economic quagmire of the country.
That's a serious analysis perspective there. I mean, in other words, from what you've said so far, Nigeria's democracy has not progressed, so to speak, because this has not translated to the advancement of the poor masses. You wrote an article which was published in the Republic Journal recently, well written and well researched article at that. But so some of the critics or your critics have raised many questions about the burning questions in Nigerian politics. You during the course of that piece, while reading that speech, you said Nigerian capitalism is a catastrophe. Um, I mean, Nigerian capitalism is not in crisis, but Nigerian capitalism is at this point in time is a catastrophe. To could you expatiate on that?
Very good. Well, thank you very much. First on the article for the Republic Journal, and by the way, I would say quite a very interesting. It's a journalistic outfit that takes reporting in a serious manner. It was because there was serious peer review process also involved, and what I tried to do with that piece is to put in perspective June 12th as in a holistic sense that shows the contending forces. June 12th did not just happen. To show how the struggles of radical forces against military dictatorship led to the opening of June 12th, and how people will talk of people like Abiola as heroes of democracy. I've even seen a lot of on Facebook now posting so many very, very funny people as heroes of the primary heroes of democracy are the masses of Nigeria. You understand? And some of those that are put forward as heroes now, I mean, it was history forced the roles they played on them. Not that for example, Abiola understood that what united him and IBB together was much more than what separated them. When we marched to Abiola's house on July 5, 1993, that was probably the largest march in the history of the country. The National Concord, which was a bit more conservative with its estimates, said that there were over 800,000 people on the streets. The National Concord said it was over 1 million, and I am inclined to, I agree with that. But if 800,000 is not a joke, to give you an idea, then myself, Femi, and Femi Abayori were coordinating the campaign for democracy in the Mushi axis. I later became a member of the highest organ of the campaign for democracy, its National Implementation Committee. But at that time, we were coordinating the Mushi axis, and we moved people from the Mushi angle, people from different areas. For you to have an idea of the mass on the street that day, from Abiola to Toyin, to Allen Avenue, to Awolowo Road, down to Agege Road, Agege Motor Road, it was a sea of heads. It was a sea of heads. So, but despite the fact that Campaign for Democracy had told Abiola that we will be coming, do you realize that he didn't want to attend to us? When we got there, the first thing we were told is Babansu. Yes, they said Babansu. And now look at it. Say, which Babansu, like how? They should go. But do you know the important thing is that later we realized that he had traveled the night before to Abuja to discuss with Babangida. Then also, when on November 15, when Justice Dolapo Akinsoya, I think it was, declared the ING illegal, and Omoyele Sowore was there, was not even only Unilag, it was the chair of the Lagos State Joint Campuses Committee, and he mobilized the entire students down there. Do you know what?
Yeah.
MKO told us to go and that student, you people should go and read your book and prepare for exam. Leave us. Abacha is my friend. This is my friend. So they knew that the things that unite them are more than the things that divide them.
Separate them.
Yeah. So now back to the issue of where the Nigerian democracy is now, and the issue of crisis and all that. Is that and this is where I think there are a number of people on the radical left in Nigeria. There's a lot of just bombastic talking without in-depth critical thinking. You see, the thing is, every crisis will lead to a resolution in one form or the other, or the collapse of the entire system. That's where you talk of either even barbarism or socialism. Or the thing is that the resolution that comes, which could be victory for one side, which could be compromise here, which could be this emerge from contending forces, not just the grammar that is taught. You understand what I'm saying? Of course, analysis is also important, but not just empty analysis, not backed with any material force on ground. So the balance that emerged, the new balance of force that emerged in 1999 was such that the radical left, which played a critical role, one, in creating the context in which June 12 could lead to a democratic revolution. Two, drove the process of fight back that was at the heart of the June 12 struggle. And three, made the system ungovernable, leading to imperialism reaching the conclusion that, look, there had to be what do they call that, this thing in hard maths, elimination substitution by simultaneous equation. Of, you just saw that likely Gbagam one go on the 8th of June, likely Jagbagam one go on 7th of July, and then the two players are, and then let's have a new political transition program. It was that they saw that situation of it would have led to anomy, because it seemed the left was not strong enough to lead the people in overthrowing the reaction of Abacha, and the state was not strong enough to contain us. But despite these three key roles that the left play, for a number of reasons, some of them subjective. When I say subjective, some of them based on, this inadequacy of critical thinking. I'm sorry to say, but it's a simple fact. Led to a situation where it was those capitalists, a lot of whom collaborated with the military, that became the primary beneficiaries of the democracy that was won as civil rule. Something similar to what happened with independence. Something similar to what happened with independence.
Now, Babayi, thank you for helping us to get that historical perspective. I mean, considering the fact that you are one of those who, through student universalism, actually fought against the annulment of the June 12 presidential election. And thank you for helping us understand what happened and what emotions that engagement evoked. There's one you were talking about the radical left during your last comments. Um, in spite of the systemic crisis that has been so calamitous for the Nigerian masses, and one that has lasted for almost 4 decades, 40 years, we've seen economic genocide and the political domination of the bourgeois, the capitalist class, just like you have. And one issue that has come to the fore in recent time is the fact that the ruling capitalist class has not at any time faced even the most minimal political challenge from the radical left. Why is that?
That's an interesting question. Uh, I would not totally agree with that, but I will say that the radical left has, largely speaking, not been able to put its act together as much as it should. Um, why do I say these two things? Excuse me. First, when you look at the history of the country and you look at it, that even though the focus of that article was June 12th, I put in perspective the emergence of the left in the 1940s, how the left played a key role, with a number of platforms, most particularly the Zikist National Vanguard, how the Zikist National Vanguard was smashed. And note that because it is also, there are several things involved in the limitations of the left. I have stressed what I consider to be a very key one, which is that the left hardly gets its act right. But there's also the fact that the left has consistently faced repression, including, imprisonment, including being murder, people being killed, including organizations being disbanded, and so on and so forth. Uh, and there have been, and when you say the left, although the focus um, of the paper was also like the Marxist left, the revolutionary left, but you talk broadly of the left, you look even at organizations like the Northern Elements Progressive Union, NEPU, which later became the PRP, the Second Republic. You talk to some extent of the left wing of the Action Group. In fact, in the 1960s, it is interesting to note that almost all the leading parties, except the Northern People's Congress, laid claim to some form of socialism or the other. Action Group declared its program to be democratic socialism. Zikist Zik declared that the NCNC stood for pragmatic socialism, and so on and so forth. And of course, the NEPU, as we know, stood for the Talakawa, like the peasantry and the common man and woman in general. And it brought to, and it's important to stress on women, because it brought together some of the most valiant women like Gambo Sawaba. And there was also collaboration between these different left bodies. Like, for example, people might not realize just how closely Gambo Sawaba worked with Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, who was a Maoist, and was one of just two persons that won the Lenin Prize. These are facts of our history. But, and I'll say this without any fear or favor, I think that our forebears on the Nigerian left put in a lot of effort, yes. And there are a lot of things you hear also of, we did this, we didn't do that. But when you look at what is happening, one of the reasons why you've been able to have things like the pink tide in Latin America and what have you, we've been able to have reawakening of resistance in the UK, in Greece, and all that, is that in those periods where at best the left in Nigeria was building groups in hundreds and thousands, in these countries, in these other countries, the left were building parties and groupings with tens and hundreds of thousands of members. Politics is always a game of number, not just in the sense of ballots that they try to reduce it to. Even taking to the streets, it's about numbers. Even the issue of membership to be able to have some capacities about, we haven't built organizations. And that is very important. Rather, what I have seen, and the fallout of that in this current period, is that you see people looking for what is not lost, or not trying to understand why we had to be looking for it in the first place. What do I mean by this? See, for example, I have said this, I've written extensively on it. What the African Action Congress represents is both a continuation and a rupture of the finest traditions, left traditions in the country. And I say this without any apology. I said, and with it, the Coalition for Revolution. For example, we talk of Abiola, June 12, and all this now. As I said, I wasn't only a student leader during that period. I was a leader, a national leader of the Campaign for Democracy.
Yeah.
When it started, we didn't have the kind of team that the African Action Congress and CORE have brought to the fore in the past 4 years in this country. And this is despite the fact that Campaign for Democracy had a much more fertile political ecosystem, with a National Association of Nigerian Students that was driven by revolutionary left students, that had movement structures on campuses across the country. So, but instead of this, you see some on the left, fighting over the gutter is dirty or the gutter is not dirty. Why are they using take it back or not take it back? And you're not seeing the same people now saying they are giving critical support in one way or the other to someone like Peter Obi. See inconsistency. The ANC has put on the agenda the need to go beyond just yege reforms to revolutionary transformation as the basis, for the emancipatory politics that will bring about this. So, squaring back to your question, there are a number of reasons why the left taking on the bourgeois has been stunted. Some of these are as a result of, both the carrot and stick by the ruling class, the capitalists, but then there are some self-inflicted dimensions of it, which includes, amongst other things, not learning to work amongst the working. Is a different thing to talk big grammar about the working class people. It's a different thing to actually organize working class people. And you see that the more distant leftists are from actual organizing, the more highfalutin and gargantuanly empty their slogans and perspective, if you can call it certain things like that. So we need to change. We need to change our this approach.
All right, let me now get your view on this. Finally, on this issue, because we are actually running out of time. One of the things that we saw during the June 12th struggle was the spirit and the commitment of the critical mass of Nigerians to the actualization of the June 12th, and we that is entirely lacking among youths of today. Why is that, and what could be done to rekindle that same spirit and commitment? And also, perhaps you could also add what Nigeria's political system must do at this point in time in order to reenact the gates of the June 12th election.
Loaded questions. Note the S. So I'll try to take them one by one. Well, first, I think that the June 12 did not just happen in a vacuum. As I stated in that article you kindly mentioned, One, the left laid the basis for being able to turn the spark of anger at the annulment into mass action. And they left in various ways, including even the student. And I'm happy you talk about the student. 2 or 3 days after the annulment, I remember Shorea and myself led students from the University of Lagos to the NLC Secretariat at Yaba. We wanted to reason together with Pascal Bafiao in our school. We didn't get him. We went with another senior official of the NLC. But anyway, and that was because it was that, look, Labour was not standing up for the masses.
Yeah.
So, yes, there was greater radicalization on the campuses, and even outside, there were political groups, some aligned with the SDP, there's some distinct. Like there's a group that I think that's a group that researchers need to work on alongside similar group, Committee of Youth Nationwide. That is where Prince Ade Adewumi and I first met in 1992, even before the June 12. This was a group in Onikpan, AAA, which played a key role in their own way in holding that Onikpan. You understand what I'm saying? And blending with the students' movement, in Mushi, myself, Comrade RMC, Femi Obayori, Femi Okolu, we established PLEM, Progressive Youth League Mushi. In fact, we got picked up in organizing action then, and we are detained briefly in Ikoyi prison. In mainland, I helped also to establish the mainland progressive youth movement. When I facilitated the meeting then of Solomon Minige and Sodo with Barrister Osage. Well, why am I trying to say that? The context then was such that youth radicalism was generalized. But, and this is very, very important, fast forward, the same youth that you now think that, hey, they have lost direction, we are at the fore of answers. You see, for as long as life does not end on the air, blood will not end on the fingertip. Every generation we try to kill the lies in different ways, but the youth will rise up. But the thing is, when there's absence of revolutionary theory, it hampers the extent to which practice can lead to taking action forward. I've forgotten your second, and because you loaded that part of the problem with
exactly. Yeah, I sorry about that.
I'll be quick with them, but just remind.
I can understand. It happens to me sometimes. Yeah, what I wanted to find out was that why the Nigerian political system itself has not been able to reenact the gains of June
and what
12.
political system would
Exactly.
require to.
Exactly.
A lot of people forget nowadays that one of the first things Buhari did, even though he did it for reasons of the more you look, the less you see, was to set up a political bureau, which was headed by Professor Cookie, the Cookie Commission. And this political bureau went across Nigeria to ask the people what kind of social, economic, and political system would be best for the Nigerian people. And the answer was a resounding one: socialism. This was in 1987. When when Buhari got that, they tried to repress the report of this political bureau, but Dele Giwa published it in the news, and it was part of his sin against them. You understand what I'm saying? So the thing is that we need a socialist transformation of society generally. So at the time when people say socialism, some have wrong idea of it. That is it that everybody would be marrying the same wife, or maybe they will be repressing people like what you had in Russia. And no, socialism essentially is the body of, ideas, politics, and movements aimed at the emancipation of the oppressed people by the oppressed themselves. It's about building democracy, genuine, lasting democracy from below in all facets of our life. I've shown how even under capitalist democracy, in some countries you have democracy within campus to be able to be involved in. But why here you see vice chancellors, provost, and they see themselves as second in command to God, if not God. There's not that kind of a thing. So we need to bring all mass, we need to democratize every aspect of society. That is what socialism is all about, and that to use the wealth of the people for the benefit of the people, not that some people will use it on behalf of the people for the benefit of the people, because just as Che Guevara pointed out, the people don't need liberators. The people are and must be the liberators of themselves. It is about, the people, like for example, in the revolutions in Sudan, even despite the fact that it was truncated, you had things like neighborhood resistance committees. These are the kind of things we are talking of democratic structures of popular power from below. So these are the things that we need to change the system for the better, for the masses, for the working class people. And that is the struggle for the emancipation of the working class. That is where it has to lead to. That is what revolution in the 21st century has to be. Socialist overthrow of capitalism.
We'll invite our readers to please, our viewers to actually read Baba Ye's article on June 12th, The Left and Nigeria's Democratic Revolutions. It's also available on the Sahara Reporters website. So Baba Ye, thank you so much for your insightful analysis and perspective.
Thank you very much, Gomez. It's my pleasure. Warm regards.